Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the 360 Experience, where I, as your host, Tim Braheem, seek to bring you fascinating conversations with interesting people. And today's guest is a gentleman that I've known for a very, very long time. Dave Savage is an icon in the mortgage business. He started as an originator and then developed a software program that has really changed the way loan originators do their job if they've, in fact, successfully implemented it. I was a beta tester of his product back in the late 1990s, so that kind of dates us in terms of how long we've known each other. And it was at the cornerstone of the business success that I had. But we're gonna talk about a lot of things today. Dave has recently sold the Mortgage Coach, and he is now the Chief Innovative Officer of Mortgage Coach and of Sales Boomerang, which gives him a new role that he's playing. Dave's a fascinating guy. He is a terrific marketer. He's an amazing networker. He's an incredibly bright businessman. And I want to talk to him today about everything from the 1,000+ interviews that he's done with top producing loan officers over the years to the events that he's attended to what the process was like of actually selling your company and what he learned from that and some of his life philosophies. We're going to have a nice long chat catching up because it's been quite some time. Welcome to the 360 Experience and my conversation with Dave Savage. What do the following great originators and leaders have in common? Craig Strent, Ryan Grant, Brent Hicks, Josh Burris, and Josh Metal. Yes, they've all been guests on my show, but they are also graduates of the Leadership 360 Signature Program, a 1-year business and life coaching program that includes an 8-day business and life planning retreat in Costa Rica and a 4-day retreat at my home in Southern California. It's exclusive to only 12 people annually, and there are 3 of us as coaches, myself, Scott, and Julie. We're now accepting applications for our 11th group. We've been doing this for a long time and continuing to perfect it. Go to www.leadership360now.com. That's www.leadership360now.com. Or you can go to the show notes and click on the link below. I hope you're enjoying today's show. Right. Well, welcome back to Cali. And welcome to the show, and welcome back into my life for a few hours because we have not been as connected as I think we probably should have been lately. But you know, life does its thing. I'm just going to take the listener back just real quick, just to give you like 50,000 foot timeline. So I don't know exactly when we met Dave, but I think it was like 1999 in that range. And then Dave's launching the Mortgage Coach, and I'm cranking loans and start adopting it and loving it and having huge success from it. And then we just became friends from there, you know, and I just admire all the work that you've done in the industry. Congratulations on your success on the sale of your company, which I want to dive into that in a little bit. But just for right now to start, man, especially for the time this is being recorded, people like you and I that have been around for a long time, we can bring some experience that can't be taught in a classroom, right? So like I'd like to see us go there today and help some people too. And welcome to the show, bro.
Yeah, no, it's good to be here. And as I was thinking about the conversation we're going to have today and just how grateful for the friendship that we've had, you bring up a really good point. You know, the fact that you were one of the first power users, you know, people that was, you know, on stages, killing it in the mortgage industry, a complete role model to everyone in the industry. And then you use Mortgage Coach. Like, I think that whole move, like, the way I interview loan officers and showcase individuals in different markets, you were the OG. I was actually trying to think of who was before Tim Braheem. I think it was you. I think it was me at first. Like, I was my model, and then I think you might have been the OG rock star officer bragging about Mortgage Coach.
Maybe bragging about Mortgage Coach, but I think the OG was Todd Duncan. Okay, so like he did lots of cool interviews that I used to listen to on audio cassette. But see, now we're getting way back, dude, just after 8-track, right in that sweet audio cassette, you know, segment of life. But it's so crazy. So you speak of this, right? This morning, I'm texting in the WhatsApp thread with my clients in the L360 family, and we're talking about me telling them how to use and that they should use a total cost analysis to show a 2-1 buy down. And I'm having like flashbacks, dude. I'm like, is this 2022 or is this 2000 and a 1 or 2 or something like that? You know what I mean? I mean, things are very much returned to the same in some ways. in this market.
Well, there's no doubt. Although I do want to just speak to that Todd Duncan. I mean, he was the one that would interview us and learn that move, and then we'd learn about each other in the business. I was really referring in terms of how we sold Mortgage Coach, how we train people on Mortgage Coach. You were that loan officer that shared a story and taught a strategy all at the same time.
And I love that so many people still use it, man. It makes me stoked. I mean, yeah, it's great. I was in the process of buying a home in Utah, and Josh was my loan officer, and he put together a total cost analysis with the video built in, and I was watching. I was just going, man, I wish I had this tech when I was using it. I would have been cranking videos. It would have been really fun. But we can get there too, because I think that's an essential thing that we ultimately talk about is the importance in this market of being a professional and separating yourself. But yeah, I mean, where should we go here? Let's just start with the market right now. I think that's a decent place to start. What I'm finding is that there are a lot of newer people in the business, Dave, that haven't been exposed to some of the old teaching, which is super valuable right now. I'm wondering if you're experiencing that at all. Like, now, how to sell a 2-1 buy down, how to sell against it, how to talk to your listing agent about how you can sell it to the seller, so they're not fumbling the ball. I mean, but that was stuff we were doing a long time ago,
Yeah. I think it all comes under the concept of creativity. And most of the loan officers that have got into the business since the meltdown never learned creativity. It's been a 30-year fixed rate market. It's been, it's gradually got better and better and better. And then the past 2 years of 2020 and 2022, were just volume markets. It was all about how quickly and efficiently can you run a mortgage experience, and with very little to no creativity and strategy for the consumer. And even, the people that have been doing this for a long time, I call it, they've lost their sales fitness. They're very unfit from a creative standpoint. And I think that book that you did with Bill Dallas, I can't remember what year it was.
It's been all over our WhatsApp threads the last 2 weeks. Tyler Osby and Jay Dacey brought it out of the closet, and yeah, there's a lot of
what
2007. He and I wrote that book together. 2006, 2007, right when the meltdown happened.
Well, because we were moving into creativity mattered, and
right?
And creativity was, and that's where we're at right now. And new loan officers don't even get it, and experienced loan officers forgot it. And the cool thing is they're learning quick. I interview a lot of loan officers, and the amount of creativity I'm seeing coming from the stress that the market's in right now, I mean, it fires me up. It is, we'll be a better industry, and consumers will get a better experience for another decade, because loan officers are being forced to do more than just sell debt. They're being forced to help solve problems for consumers.
Well said, man. I 1,000% agree with everything you said. And I wanted to underscore that word creativity, because I think that that's such an important word that you used. I think that it's a really interesting juxtaposition, which is that when you're in fear because shit changed, and I don't know when the next round of layoffs is going to be that I'm going to have to execute on, or whatever, you then when we're in fear, we get constricted. We kind of close down, hunker down, get very narrow focus, and we're steeped in our fear. And that's the exact opposite of creativity, which is a totally different energy, right? Which is like curious and trying new shit and seeing what works and testing and having fun with the process of learning, and trying new scripts and trying new cells. And that, you're right. That's atrophied in the person, because they haven't had to for a long time.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And you brought up a really good point, because you are seeing a lot of stress behaviors in the market, and with loan officers and realtors, and it is stressful. I mean, it is, the market has pivoted. I think one thing that would take a lot of, and I don't know if you've got some wisdom for this, but there's a reset, and to try to think about the volume that you did in 2020 and 2021, it's gone. It was a COVID bubble. And while there may be another $4 trillion year in the mortgage industry, I think we need to get realistic that, it's back to what is a normal market. Make sure that you've right-sized your budget so that you're not dealing with stress behavior. And I think the industry has rapidly, I don't think it's done, but we've gotten close to removing the financial stress from the machine. I think by the end of the year, uh, I think the industry will be right-sized to a great extent. And then we got to get creative. We got to, there is an affordability crisis in America, and this rapid increase in rates didn't create it. Like, we had an affordability crisis in America before rates went from in the twos and threes to in the sevens. So I think creativity is going to be the superpower. Curiosity is going to be the superpower this decade. If you're a local referral-based mortgage professional, real estate professional.
And that's just healthy. I mean, like, look what's happening with Meta right now. Like, they're going through it. I mean, you see their stocks down like almost, it's like 75%. I mean, nobody's buying into what Zuckerberg's wanting to do with AI and the metaverse. I mean, people are jumping ship and they're trying to remake themselves, and they're trying to get curious with, like, what is, I mean, that's what you have to do in those kinds of situations. So that you interview a lot of people, which is a unique thing that you bring to this conversation that I'd like to tap into. So, like, what do you like? You can name names if you want, or you can generalize, but, like, what are you seeing people doing right now that you think is really important? As I want to give you a quick little backstory. So you know this, but I connected these dots the other day when talking to Ryan Grant. So 94 is when I developed the first thing that I was known for, which is database management. And that's Hillestad helped me develop this really great ACT database management strategy. I started teaching on it, and it was a huge thing for my business, like catapulted me. And then in 99, I developed the other thing that I was kind of known for, which is a perfect loan process. And then I thought about it. I was like, 94 rates were at 9 3/4. 99 rates were at 8.5. It's in those years where things slow down that you have the greatest opportunity to create the thing that is going to make you even more powerful in the future. You never do it when you're hot as hell and refining everybody. But, like, right now is the time for that creativity to be evoked and to be doing the things that will pay off down the road. So what are the things that you feel are important for people to be doing, and what are you seeing out there?
So I'm going to answer this two ways, like a two-part answer to this question. And the first one I'm going to play off of something that you said, because you mentioned Mark Zuckerberg. And I listened to the interview, I don't know, it's been within a month, no more than 2 months, with Joe Rogan. I don't know, did you listen to the Rogan interview with Zuckerberg?
I listened to him interview. I listened to Lex Friedman interviewing Zuckerberg. So I don't believe, no, I didn't listen to the Rogan one. I'd be curious because Rogan's a totally different style.
Gosh, I'm trying to think, was it Lex? Because I listen to a lot of Lex. I love Lex.
Me too.
But
Me too.
No, it was a Rogan interview, but he said something that I took a note on that I thought was just dead on. And this is what loan officers that are winning, like, they get this. And I'm not going to try to quote him, because I'm just going to say what I took away from it is pre-COVID. If we would have said, what is the real world? It was in person. The real world was not what you and I are doing right now. It was in person. It was a physical experience. And today, the real world is a combination of physical and digital. And, I even find myself at the end of a day thinking about all the people I talk to, and I have a hard time distinguishing, like, oh, that was a text conversation. That was a Zoom conversation. Oh, I had lunch with that person.
Yeah.
Like there's just complete blur of digital and physical relationships, experiences. And that is the real world. So, first thing I will say is that the loan officers that are thriving have adopted that. They've learned how to use video. They've learned how to use Zoom. They are still getting in person, and they haven't forgotten how to love on someone in the physical world. And they're just blending that digital and physical experience in a way that's natural. And so, like, because I have interviewed loan officers that are actually up this year. Nicole Roth, when I interviewed her in July, she was up 4.5%. So, this is a $390 million producer.
Wow.
And by the way, she's on Facebook, she's on Insta. She was using Mortgage Coach to teach seller buy down, creative finance strategies. She was hustling, doing in-person realtor meetings. She was doing one-on-ones. I mean, and I could go on. So the loan officers that are killing it, and I do believe this decade will belong to those that kill it in the real world, which is physical and digital blended together in very appropriate ways. So, any comments before I share part two of that? How I'd answer that?
I have lots of comments. I think there was a lot of wisdom and brilliance in what you said there, and I 1,000% agree with you. I think that the key part to not miss in all of that is your perfect choice of words of like a blending of all of it, because some people can tend to just whiplash over to one side and stay there and forget about the in-person stuff, because that still has its value, but strategically utilized, I mean, with the right people and with the right approach and like the right environment for that, and I want to hear more, so go to the next part. But I mean, you're kind of stimulating a lot of thought right now of what loan originators need to be doing to be relevant, and how they're utilizing the mediums that they have to be relevant. So keep on going.
And I'm gonna share two little tactics before we move off of it, because I just want everybody to realize how easy this is. Like let's say you had a coffee meeting with a realtor in the physical world, and you met up, you had coffee one-on-one, and you wowed them. You shared an idea, you had a real good connection, and let's say within an hour of meeting with them, you just pulled out your iPhone, you put it against the wall, and you recorded a little 30-second video saying, "Hey, it was so good to connect with you. I heard you say X and Y, and I can't wait for our next meeting." Just like a perfect blend of connected in person. I use video, I use my phone. Super simple. Josh Metal, who I know is someone you coach, someone who's become a great personal friend. The fact that he'll talk to someone, and then he'll do a text video, and then he'll do a total cost analysis. So I think it's just that blend. And I think the loan officers that become native with digital, but yet still are very high emotional IQ in-person professionals are just going to dominate. So number two, and I'm getting more and more clear on this market, it's mindset and marketing. It is, managing your mindset. It's hard. It isn't as hard for me as a lot of loan officers, because I did that transaction with Mortgage Coach and Sales Boomerang, and I'm literally selling shovels when there's a gold rush going on. We're like, I'm really fortunate that the technology I sell plays right into the market at hand. Although it's not without stress. I mean, we are losing customers because people are either going out of business or selling their servicing portfolios. So, we're under stress, but managing the mindset, it is the time that it is, and then marketing. And when I think of marketing, and I would love to riff with you on this, Tim, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. You're always so brilliant at it. But brilliant, marketing is your messaging. It's, are you selling loans? Are you selling financial freedom? Are you, your scripting, your positioning. The loan officers that are killing it, they're managing their mindset. They're doing the right things. They're leading and helping their teams with mindset. They're helping their realtors with mindset. They're helping like everyone around them. They're like a mindset lighthouse. And then they're great marketers, and that's a lot of different things. So those are kind of if I had a couple themes that the most successful people I'm interviewing are all doing, they're checking all those boxes.
And there's a lot that you said there too that I agree with. So,
well, of course.
What kind of case? Yeah, well, it's just a truth. I'm gonna hit on just a couple of quick points, because I want to spend a little more time on the marketing part of it. So, I've been kind of coaching this for 2-3 years now, at least in the perfect loan process, teaching that hey, right now, like if you want to separate yourself from your competition, if you're talking to a potential borrower, you use the analogy with maybe a coffee appointment with a realtor, but if you're talking to a potential borrower after every initial consult, you have to be on a visual medium with them, whether it be the initial meeting was on a visual medium like Zoom like this, and you got to know them that way, or whether it's in a follow-up to a phone call immediately thereafter, because you need to establish a deeper connection. And that connection is established through the visual medium in a much deeper way than it is just auditory. You know, you can have some expression, you can smile, you can evoke emotion and connection in people that gives you a substantial edge if that person's considering to talk to others that don't do that. Like, I mean, that's just a simple application that's kind of irrefutable that it would work better, shy of you not saying something intelligent on your video. But other than that, it's got to work better, right? The mindset thing, a phrase that I've been using lately with everyone is we're just figuring it out. I mean, we're just in the process of figuring it out. Like, can you have that kind of curiosity towards what's happening right now and stay open and creative as a result, and continually remind yourself, we're just figuring it out. You can say it sucks right now and I'm stressed and I'm worried. I don't think it's going to work real well for you in the long run. But another choice is I'm figuring it out. Every day I'm figuring out a little bit more. You know, it's that, you know, Thomas Edison, I guess he they did 10,000 tests of the light bulb and his team said, you know, this is futile. We're not going anywhere. And he said, nonsense. We know 10,000 ways that it cannot be done. You know, it's like we're just learning and growing, right? So embodying that. So to your marketing thing, I think one thing that I would add, bro, is, and it's probably both. So you framed it up as, are you selling loans or are you selling financial freedom and stability? Was that what it was?
Financial freedom and wealth with real estate. You know,
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
what I said, but I think those are the two things that I try to really advocate for loan officers, that they get real clear on, that they're not selling loans. You're not selling interest rates. And if you are, your product sucks. I mean, rates have gone up a lot, and it's not a very fun product to sell. But if you're selling clarity when there's chaos, or you're selling financial freedom, which here in America everyone wants, you can win in every market, because people always need clarity when there's chaos, and people all want to achieve financial freedom. And so I just think that's where it's at.
How do you feel about this phrase, which would be, you also want to be selling compassion?
So, I mean, yes, I guess here's where I go with that. I've been talking a lot about the Edelman Trust Barometer, and how this year, it's the first year in the history of that in America, distrust is the default. So literally, I mean, guys, this is not mortgage, this is not real estate, this is not housing, this is just what time it is
Society,
in
society,
America.
and sociological
and,
component.
well,
Right.
different countries have different energy levels around that. I don't think the distrust is the default in every country in the world, but I'll bet you there's a lot of countries where distrust is the default. But this is what time it is in America. And then I think it was about 2 weeks after I saw that report on the Edelman report, there was a Wall Street Journal article. Oh God, what's his name? The Drucker Management Index. And they, every year they come out with like, what are the 5 top traits of the best leaders in America? And for the first time in history, though, they said that curiosity is one of the top 5 traits of leaders in America. So that's not like every year. It's not curiosity. It's a lot of other things, but curiosity. And so I think you're right. I just don't know that you sell it. I think you have to become it.
Yes.
And by the way, that's one thing that I really liked about that. Hey, I'm figuring it out. That's how a curious person goes about things.
Mm-hmm.
And I do, but I don't think you could sell it. I think you could sell the solutions to the problem, but you need to become a person of empathy, a person of curiosity, if you want to sell those things. So that's my only debate.
I don't even think I'm not even sure that I'm hearing a debate.
Well, you said sell, like you're selling.
But hold on. Just because I don't necessarily use the word sell as something that I need to do, I can sell who I am by being me.
Correct.
And
Fair enough.
and that's where I think we're totally linked up in what you said, and that's super fascinating. Like, how do you be? I wrote down while you were saying that. Like, how do you be if trust is the issue? How do you be trustworthy? Like, how? What does that look like? Like, what do you? How do you need to show up? What mediums? Back to your technology stuff. What mediums do you want to portray yourself on? To truly be yourself and have people feel that, wow, this person's different, like they're smart. And I mean, smart has got to be a part of the equation. They use, things like, the mortgage coach, et cetera, but the decisive edge is everybody that I work with, I serve, and I come from a transparent place, and I'm honest, and I really care about their best interests, and the rest takes care of itself because they fucking tell everybody. Because nobody gets treated like that. And that's the part that that everybody needs to understand right now. Like, if you're hunkering down right now and trying to figure out curiously, like, what should I be doing? You should be looking to some of these very valuable things, such as how do I debunk the distrust out there? Like, that's big, bro.
Yeah. Well, and now that you said it, I didn't say it in terms of one of my things. What do the best do? The best are curious. They're curious how to win in this market, and they're learning from each other. They are not showing up on social media rent shaming people and like pushing their opinions on people. They're data driven. Like, let's use data to drive narratives. But they're showing up with curiosity, and then they are showing up. Like, when I interview people that are very successful, and I don't know how much of it is this is who they are, and so they became successful, but they are grateful. They are gratitude. They are uh, positive people. Although I've been thinking a lot about that lately, just knowing that you can't take mindset for granted. And I've come up with this, just kind of playing a head game with myself, that like the root of everything that I've ever achieved in business came from curiosity. It came from, like, that is, if I had one superpower that has really, and I don't know how much of it's the DNA that I have, how much of it is the habits that I created early in my life. But curiosity is the bullseye. It's the North Star.
What's what's the furthest back? Like, it's so cool that we're having this discussion, because you could ask a lot of people and they would tell you that I've been saying for quite some time now. I think it's one of the most important words in the English language that nobody even thinks about. Like, I really do believe
You're
that
saying
word
is
curiosity, bro. It's where all the growth happens. It's why a kid grows. It's how a kid learns how to speak. It's how the whole universe is displaying that all the time.
Everything is positive. Everything is good. And growth.
Yeah. So to your point, like, if you're like selling the fear of, rent shaming, okay, that's not curiosity. I mean, that's a totally different energy. It's like desperate energy. But let's go back now in time for a minute. So, yes, as you say that about yourself, I'm like, yes, he is very curious. I never really sat and thought about that before, but bullseye for sure. Where do you think that started? Like, I'd be interested to know. Do you remember yourself always being that way as a little kid?
Yeah, that's why I kind of give a lot of DNA credit for that. I mean, I did, like, I woke up naturally before my family woke up. And so what I'm told is that I used to get into things, and they have, pictures of me with pouring, maple syrup on my head, and, doing all kinds of crazy things as a kid. So I was a very curious kid. Now, a lot of kids are curious like that, but not all kids wake up, at 5 before 6 in the morning since birth. So I think that's that. So no, I really do feel like I was blessed with curiosity and a lot of energy to discover, and I never stopped doing it.
Were your parents like supportive of that? Like, what's your memories of how, like, were you allowed to be curious for most of your childhood, or?
I feel like it.
That's good, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds like it. I mean, I would imagine that if it was, kibosh was put on it, that maybe you wouldn't have carried it in your adulthood.
Well, I after you say, I just thought of something. I did think, through, call it, institutional school years, because I think I've shared this. I'm ADD, like, real deal. I took Ritalin as a grade school. I'm dyslexic. I, had significant learning disabilities. hated reading out loud. So I will say that during, the years of school, from the time that you started having to read out loud at school through high school, I my curiosity was massively diluted, and I was an athlete, so I always liked people and making friends. But I will say the big breakthrough as an adult is when I had my first mentor, Mel Samick. I remember he hired me, and I'd never heard of books on tape. All I knew was that if you would learn, you had to read. And I remember, my first day in the mortgage business working for Mel, I one of the things I had to do is commit that I would learn every day. And I remember going to his house, like going, oh shit, I'm gonna have to read. And I remember him pulling out Tommy Hopkins books on tape, and I'm just like,
Wow.
what? I can like listen to books on tape and learn things, And so that was, I'd say that was a mass. After you and I are thinking about that, I'm thinking about it like,
This is like audio cassette time, right?
yeah, like that
Yes,
was
for sure.
that
Tape
that was like,
recorder.
I can learn anything, because I
Yeah.
don't have to read everything.
Well, but it's super cool though that what this person introduced you to was that kind of content.
Oh, totally.
Because that was, how old were you?
Well, it was 1986. So I was born in 64. Do the math. My 20s, 25. No, yeah,
Right,
25.
ripe time when the mind is fully matured and
Yeah,
ready
the
to
frontal
learn.
cortex is connected,
Yeah.
and yeah, I was ready to get serious and make money, and
Mm-hmm.
I got married at 27. So yeah, I was either 24 or 25.
So let's shift for a second. What do you? First of all, I didn't know about those things that you just shared about dyslexia and ADD. I think you said, and I didn't know that. So I think it's really amazing just how much you've achieved, in your life. You've overcome some serious barriers there, I would imagine. And I'm wondering, like, actually, I hear Joe Rogan talk about this a lot, and it's a topic that I really like to hear explored, is the benefits of having to work really hard to break through something, to have to fail at something, and how that makes you stronger and makes you, So do you have any comments on that? Do you feel like those moments made you stronger?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, I think everything that you get through that was hard, you build calluses of grit, you build, calluses of, not taking things personally, and you again, assuming you don't let it break you, beat you, or define you, you become better from it. I mean, although I truly believe my ADD and dyslexia are like the biggest gifts I was ever given,
Yeah.
because that's part of how I solve problems. That's how I've been an innovator my whole life. Whether I was in the mortgage business and I was innovating as a loan officer, and then when I made the decision to be a technology innovator, I mean, none of that would have happened if I, got A's in school and reading was easy. And and I like how my life has worked out. So I think they in America, for kids that are in institutional schools, they are learning disabilities, but in life, they are, they as difficult as they are, they have a whole lot of benefits that come along with them.
Yeah, there's there's a super fine line there, and that is butted right up against brilliance. Like if you look at some of the common diagnoses, ADHD, or like on the spectrum of autism or whatever, there's also like a lot of brilliance that those people have that, if they can channel it correctly, can make a huge difference in the world. I mean, you sure did. I mean, think about how many people, like how many, do you know what the all-time total is on subscribers of Mortgage Coach? I mean, I'd be curious.
It's a lot. I mean, the meltdown cleansed the industry pretty well. So, and while we used to brag about, oh, we got 20,000 users of Mortgage Coach, getting on the other side of having a database and being a technologist,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many users we had. Like, we really did think we had that many, but I didn't realize how dirty our data was, and just and you know what it's like when you go through a transaction. You learn how dirty your data is, and you find out how many users you are. But there's no doubt there's tens of thousands, for sure north of 30,000 loan officers have subscribed to Mortgage Coach. Over 20,000 today, and then but the thing the metric that I measure the most is just how many families are getting a TCA. Like that is the number one metric that kind of guides the mission I have is like, are we changing the way people get into debt? Like, does a family get, like, you got a total cost analysis from Josh? That's one. Like, how do we make that happen millions of times annually? And that's the number I'm playing for.
I could take this in two different directions because you said two different things that I wanted to talk with you about. One of them was relating to the Mortgage Coach and what you learned from the sale of the company, because I think that we could go down that path, and I'd like to. But I'll quickly comment rather than going down the rabbit hole on the other path. That recently I had Gay Hendricks. I don't know if you know who he is. I had Gay Hendricks on the show. He was amazing. I really enjoyed my time with him. So nice to talk to a wise elder who has been doing his work for a long time. And he shared a metaphor that just reminded me of what you said. He said, and I'm going to screw it up because I've only heard it once, but he's like, you ever heard the story, Tim, about the groups of people carrying these huge boulders up to the top of this mountain, and half of them were grimacing and complaining and upset, and the other half were blissful and had a smile on their face and were marching up the hill with enthusiasm. And I said, no, I haven't heard that story. And he said, well, the group of people that were grimacing, when they asked them what they were doing, they said they were carrying rocks. And the people that were joyful, they were asking what they were doing, and they were saying, we're building a temple to God. And the metaphor is the purpose, right? So like, it was really beautiful that you just identified that the driving force for you is serving those families. Because I was going to ask you the question, what keeps you going? But I think you just answered it for me right there. Would that be accurate?
Totally. Well, I think we both know, I mean, the power of why, like curiosity drives a grateful heart and drives a person that's super successful in relationships. If that's selling, curiosity powers that. But purpose beyond dollars is what creates all the great stories in life. Yeah. So no doubt about that. Your why. I remember I did an interview with Phil Black, who's a former Navy SEAL. And after the SEALs, he's a fireman, but he's an entrepreneur, and he created this kind of like this book for SEALs. Like, hey, if you want to go through SEALs training and increase the chances of passing buds, he had this. I don't know if it was $100 or $1,000, but he had these tapes. And I remember when I interviewed him, and he also went on to be a SEAL trainer. But he said, when you really look at who makes it through SEALs, there's a lot of very fit people. There's a lot of very successful people. There's a lot of different people, but it all comes down to the why. If you're doing it because you want to, like, I'm a SEAL, he's like, I don't care how fit you are, you're probably going to watch out. It really comes down to purpose. And I think that that same message applies to just about everything in life. The harder it is, the bigger the purpose and the more personal the purpose needs to be. But I think that's just the truth.
Very well said. And I think that my quest is always to try to figure out ways to help people uncover the answer to that, because I think that there are so many people out there that feel like they're lost in this area of really having a driving force that's meaningful to them. Do you have any suggestions as it relates to that?
Well, I have a couple different times over my career, because that's also applies to when it comes to adopting technology, whether you're adopting a CRM, whether you're adopting Mortgage Coach, whether you're trying to adopt video. part of the process that I evangelize, I built our company around, is it starts with why. And I usually have people start with, like, let's say you're a loan officer, start with your mortgage why. Like, why are you a loan officer? And be very honest about it. Like, there's not a, I mean, there is a right answer. You know, if the right answer is just to make $10,000 a month, that's going to be where you go. Like, that's your ceiling. If your answer is just purely money, it will be limiting. The right answer is something bigger, deeper, more personal, more valuable. And then whatever the technology that they're trying to adopt, I like have a why around it. Like, what's your mortgage coach why? Because what I've learned is there are loan officers that like type like this with one finger and have horrible keyboard skills, and there's loan officers that type like 80 words a minute. And I've seen both of them adopt mortgage coach, and I've seen both of them not adopt it. And it always came down to their why. You know, like like why were they trying to adopt mortgage coach? You know, how deep was it that like I need to do this? And if they've got a why that's personal enough and powerful enough, they'll get through the pain of change. So like I said, you could probably Google mortgage coach why worksheet, and you'll see a version of that. Every couple of years, I edit it and update it, but it's like that with everything in life, especially adopting new technology and changing personal behaviors.
Yeah, the purpose is the fuel, right? Like, I mean, even it's the fuel for longevity too. Like, the blue zones, I'm sure you're probably familiar with the blue zones. I mean, that's one of the common denominators of the different blue zones in the world. For those that don't know what they are, the places where people have the longest lifespan. So number one is Okinawa, Japan. And people live to be on average, I think, into like their late 80s, early 90s there as an average. And there's lots of centurions. But the thing that they've found is one of the main common denominators of all these different areas on the planet where people live longer is that they have a purpose to live. That's a part of the human experience is how familiar are you with Joseph Campbell?
I'm not.
Dude, you need to dive in. Watch the documentary Finding Joe. Have you ever seen it? No,
but I have heard of that.
It's great. Gay Hendricks is in that. I've watched it like 4 or 5 times. It's really good. And I started studying Campbell when I was like in my 20s, like when I was like 25, 26, stuff like that. And
is it as good as Finding Silverman? Remember how I don't know if you turned me onto that or I turned you onto that documentary.
Chasing.
Finding Rodriguez or what? Wait, what was
Searching for Sugar Man? Yeah,
Searching for Sugar Man. Is it
that good? No, Searching for Sugar Man's better for sure. I mean that's one of my
like all time.
Dude, that's one of my favorite documentaries of all time. Like I've seen it a bunch of times. I get emotional every time. Did
I turn you onto that, or did you turn me on?
I'm pretty sure I turned you on it because I saw it at the theater when it first came out.
Oh, then you definitely turned me on.
Yeah, and I love the music. I mean, the music is spectacular. And the story is if this wasn't a documentary, you'd be like, this is the sappiest bunch of bullshit I've ever seen in my life, but it's actually real, which is what's incredible about it, right?
No, I can vividly remember now when you did turn me on to it, and I think I literally bought every single Rodriguez song on iTunes right after. I
still listen to him.
So good. Okay, but another Tim Braheem documentary recommendation, so I'll check it out.
Finding Joe, yeah, Joseph Campbell, probably the most famous anthropologist of all time, wrote a legendary book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And it's, and like all kinds of major films, their entire script is based upon the hero's journey, which is Campbell's model. So it's like Star Wars, the Lord of the Rings trilogies, like all of those things are based upon the hero's journey. Anyway, you have been circling back. That I see that as like a part of the hero's journey is to overcome the obstacles, and there's different phraseology that he uses, but like you've overcome some obstacles and you get to this point where, because it took you a long time to sell Mortgage Coach, man. Like how you were one of the most patient businessmen I've ever seen. I mean, tell us about that. When were you thinking about selling it? And then walk us through the journey a little bit.
Well, I guess I'll go back because there was a part in our story together where, pre-meltdown, you were like, bro, it's sell it. Like I remember you
Yeah.
almost like having a intervention level conversation with me after you did your transaction with Loan Toolbox. And I had a very serious offer from Ellie Mae at the time. I
Hmm.
think I was talked to you
Hmm.
during
I
that
do.
period
I
of time.
remember. Yeah.
And Sig Anderman, took my wife and I out to dinner a few times. Like, they wanted to buy Mortgage Coach, made a strong play. I at the time, it was half cash and half stock. And I remember that he wanted to value Ellie Mae at $100 million, and I just thought, like, that's just crazy. Like, they were losing money. Uh, Again, anyone who knows what Ellie Mae became valued at, a multi-billion-dollar business, uh, to have sold Mortgage Coach for half stock and half cash was incredible. Like, if I would have pulled the trigger on that decision, what I did with Mortgage Coach is life changing, and I've achieved financial freedom, and I've got a lot of passion for what I'm doing. But I would have done that in 2005 or 2006, whenever the deal was done. So I passed on that deal with Encompass just because I didn't want to sell half cash, half stock, and I really didn't want to sell. I mean, I loved what I was doing. I had no idea. Well, I knew real estate was going to soften. I had no concept of a meltdown. Uh, and then, when 2008 happened, and I think I went from over 40 employees to multiple layoffs down to, I don't know, 14 employees.
Mm.
I mean, it was really clear, like, dude, you screwed up. Heartbreaking financial loss. A company that was at 5 million in sales with I think I just hired a president. We're going to 25 million in sales. And clearly that did not happen. And I wouldn't use the word depressed because I don't get depressed. Like, that's just not how my brain works. But I was like searching for meaning, and I don't remember. Do you know what year Simon Sinek did his TED talk around the power of why?
Golden
Um,
Circle. I don't know, but it's not that long ago. It's probably what, like,
if I had to guess, it was 2010 or 2011. I don't know when he did it, but
sounds like a
I,
long
I
time ago, but okay.
yeah, but but I was searching for purpose, coming out of that, and I was still, and then I just was surviving with Mortgage Coach. I wasn't killing it, but I liked my day to day. I liked what I did. I was passionate about the product, and then I saw that TED talk, and that was game changing for me. That was life changing for me. I don't know how many times I watched it over a 48-hour period, but
Mm-hmm.
like watched it multiple times. And all I could say is I don't know if it was 48 hours or 1 week, I had a massive pivot, and I was no longer regretful. And that was meant to happen because I will be the entrepreneur who changed how people get into debt in America. And if I would have sold out to Ellie Mae, we would have just got rolled up into the loan manufacturing process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I didn't. And I developed literally in a week that that the North Star for Mortgage Coach, the purpose I had was 2 million families a year getting a total cost analysis. And I had a whole thesis around, if 2 million families a year got a Mortgage Coach, one, I'd do very well financially and have achieved financial freedom as a family. And two, that would be enough impact that social change would happen. And I formed a purpose around that, a thesis around that. And by the way, at that time, I couldn't even measure how many families got a TCA. It was like we would create a PDF. We hadn't even had a link, but it made me start. First was, hey, how many times did a loan officer do an analysis? Oh, and I think the first time that we could measure that, it was less than 20,000. It was in the teens, maybe 12,000. We were doing, and then but like when the cloud came, like, oh, we need to get on the cloud because we could create a link, we could measure how many links are created. We can measure how many families click that link. And so we got to the cloud really early because I had that number one metric.
Because
He
you had
had
that, because you had that curiosity,
I had that curiosity.
right? I mean, this is a beautiful story to just summarize everything that we talked about. Keep going.
Yeah. So that was, I don't know where I was going to go with it, but I mean,
Well,
that was where purpose was created,
yeah.
that nothing would stop me. Like made a
Mhm.
mistake, had pain, formulated a why, and then it was, I was unstoppable. Like
Mhm.
it was not it took time, but time flew by.
What are the common denominators of top originators in the mortgage business? They're well scripted. They have a system for marketing themselves that generates leads. They manage an effective database and they have strong referral partner relationships. The other common denominator of many great originators is that they have a business and life plan, a roadmap, a guide for them to achieve success, and they have an ally, a coach, who assists them in the successful implementation of that plan. Performance Experts Performance Accelerator private one-on-one 1-year coaching program is now accepting applications. This is my company, and these are my certified coaches that specialize in the mortgage business. Go to www.mortgagecoachingnow.com and click on Get a Coach, or go to the show notes and click on the link that's provided in this episode. Now let's get back to the show. I want to get to what you learned about the process of selling a company, and I'd like, actually, when you share about it, man, share a little bit about like how you think it applies to any industry, because I happen to believe it does. So those that are listening that are not in the mortgage business or in the software business, you can draw the applicable correlation. But I don't know if I ever told you about what happened to us when we went to sell Loan Toolbox for the first time. We had do you know that the whole thing about the private equity group, did I ever tell you that story?
I mean, we talked about it, but I don't know if I know the story. So tell me the story, and then I'll tell you if I knew it.
So we were getting stretched. It was like the third year, and we were not growing in an organized way, and we were being pulled apart. So we just decided, let's try to sell. So we hired a company to create a book, and we put it out there, and there was a peg in the Silicon Valley that was interested in us, and they came down. We did the whole meeting, the first meeting where we presented. They were super chummy, like really loved us, wanted to fly us up to Palo Alto. Rich and I fly up to Palo Alto to their office where they're going to make an offer to us. And there's like 12 guys in the room at a board table, and it was a full on fucking inquisition. I mean, we were getting asked so many questions about our numbers that they had reviewed and our projections. And I remember getting on the plane to fly home, and Rich goes, "How do you think it went?" And I'm like, "I think it went really bad, dude, like really bad." And then the next day, the lead guy who had like buddied up to me, he called me up at night. I remember exactly where I was at in my old house. I'm talking to him on the phone, and he says, we're gonna pass, because they had made us an offer. We got a letter of intent before we went to Palo Alto. Okay, so they locked us in, and I just said to him, I'm like, all right. I said, I want you to know that this is the single biggest mistake that you've ever made in your business life, and you're gonna learn from that, because I'm gonna send you our P&Ls every single month until we sell, and we're going to sell for a lot more money than you were going to pay for us. And I did every fucking month, dude, for like 19 or 20 straight months, and then we got the other offer, and I sent him the offer, and he sent me an email back, really nice email, actually. He was super cool. And he was like, "Congratulations, man. I'm really happy for you." But that was the purpose. Like I needed to prove this dude wrong for not believing in us, leaving us at the altar like that, so, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's like, you can crawl into a hole. Like in 07, you could have like spent a whole bunch of time in victim mode of, oh man, I really screwed up, and I I should have sold, and what am I going to do now, and blah, blah, blah. But you got curious as to what, and then you found a purpose. So that combination of the curiosity and the purpose is just where the magic happens. What did you learn about going through the process of selling a company? Like, what did it teach you? Anything noteworthy?
Well, I mean, I learned so much. I mean, and again, I think that is a gift of curiosity. I'm always learning. This is the first time in 31 years this year where I haven't been the CEO of a company. And I'm the chief innovation officer now, and we hired a CEO several months ago. And I have learned so much about leadership, management, and growing a company in the 3 months since we brought Rich Harris on. So I learned a lot. Yeah, I mean, the process of selling a company, uh, God, I'm not going to try to call out lessons learned. I'll let you call out the lessons learned, or maybe as I talk, I'll like, oh, lesson learned. Uh, there's some things if I had to do over, I would have a year before we were doing it to make sure we really had our books in order, because once we picked a investment banker and they really started, let's call it building the book, we realized that, the way we were doing accounting and the way we were categorizing things could have been better, to the point where from the time we hired him till the time that we really were able to put the pitch book together, I think it took a year, it took 8 months. And a lot of that had to do with just um, not preparing ahead of time. So we could have prepared better at that. This is not a lesson learned, because I've learned this lesson so many times over my career, but when you make a hiring decision, it's everything. And I hired a great investment banker, David Groves, Vaquero, just picked the right person, the right company. When I was interviewing investment bankers, I thought like all of them were good to great. And then he was special. He really understood our value in a very unique way. And I just felt like, hey, this is a guy that can really, whatever the best outcome for our business is, he'll create. And so that's not a lesson learned because I know that lesson, but, for anyone listening, when you're hiring people, especially when you're making a decision that might have been the biggest decision I made in 20 years, is hire the right banker to represent me. Make sure you have 3 options or more. Make sure that you are super pumped with who you do it, because if you don't do it right, in this case, it would have cost a lot more, but that was big. I mean, I think if I had some things to do over, I was a little tighter. Like I love this philosophy: have fun, play loose. So I would have, like, we had a great business. We had multiple offers. Like, there was no question we were getting a transaction done. And if I had it to do over, I would have just been a little more loose, like not so like, got to get this done. And
Loose in what way? Like meaning that
emotionally,
you were
just chill. Just I would have had more. I did have fun in the process.
got it. Having more fun in the process was what I was going to ask.
Yeah,
So
I would had more fun in the process. But yeah, no, it was. I mean,
process is stressful, man. It's a
yeah,
stressful
it's
process
stressful.
for sure. I mean, because there's a lot of components to it. Like when you work as hard as you, because I think what we're talking about here more than selling a business is selling your identity as a personality. I mean, whenever you create something that you bootstrapped yourself and you put your heart and soul into it, it takes on your personality. And when you're selling it in some ways, you're saying, all right, sometimes people don't realize this, but it's like, I'm getting ready to step into the unknown and have to remake myself in some way because some part of me is no longer there. So
Yeah,
that's nerve wracking. When you start getting in the 11th hour and you've got employment agreements and how long you're going to be locked down for, and whether or not, you're going to really enjoy this other side. And so like, did you second guess those types of things? Did those create concerns for you, or you were certain?
well, I felt like we got really lucky. We had a half dozen written offers, a dozen parties that we probably could have got a transaction done, and then we had a few that were just dream deals. They were very, not like we thought we were going to get a great valuation, but they were great valuation, and they were really strategic. To me, when people would ask me what's important about it, like our banker, it's like, hey, I care about myself as a shareholder, and I want to be well taken care of, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to be well taken care of as a shareholder in all of the deals. The mission, to do a deal where it really changes how people get into debt in America, and that legacy was there. And then my employees, my team, the we're what deal is going to be the best for the team, and I felt like we had two really good options that would help us achieve the mission, achieve financial freedom personally, and would be good for the team. And So no, that wasn't really that hard.
I love that you had the opportunity to identify and think through all three of those reasons, because they're all super important ones. And I don't think everybody has the time or doesn't make the time maybe to really identify those things. And because it's a transition in your life, to going to being partners with others. Right. And you have to really think that through. I think you identified the hiring, which I made a mental note. I'm like, yeah, I'm actually weak in that area, man. Like I kind of am in too much of a hurry and sometimes make hires of big things in my life that I'm looking back on. I'm like, shit, man, like that wasn't serving of me, ultimately that choice, and so it sounds like you actually did the hiring twice here. You hired great investment bankers, which created a situation where you had the opportunity to interview and ultimately hire a great partner. And that's a really nice formula for success that you created there, and the identification also of things that you went through in your mental checklist of what was important to you. So the new gig, tell us about it. Like what, I don't even really know, so I'm super curious right now. Like what are you doing, and what's the mission, and what role are you playing?
So I'm just having a ball. I was planning to, be the CEO through the year. The goal is to build a multi-billion-dollar.
But who bought you? Who bought you? Just because.
So LLR Partners, a $5 billion private equity fund. I did not sell all of my stock in the business. I still rolled a significant portion into the new co, as well as the founders of Sales Boomerang did. Joe Pertour, president of Mortgage Coach, rolled a bunch in. Greg Wexler, who is my co-founder of Mortgage Coach, cashed out and just said, "Hey, I'm good. I'm gonna go pursue other business interests." But so I'm on the board of directors of this new co, and we'll be announcing a new company name soon. I would love to say the name because it's so bitchin'. Like assuming we get it protected, it's any day now. I'll be able to announce the name, but unfortunately today is not the day.
Well, this isn't airing live, man. This is airing probably it's post-produced at like 60 days or something. But then it'll be like the back page of the newspaper.
So would you edit it out if we don't get the name?
I don't want to put my post. Yeah, go ahead.
I will tell you.
Okay.
All right. So, but you will edit this out, and this is just between the two of us. So if I think,
wow, dude, what a great name, man. Thanks for sharing that with me confidentially. So, let's talk about marketing a little bit more. Cause like one of the things I was thinking about this morning when I was thinking about our time together, I was like, man, I think Dave's always been a great marketer, and I'm not sure how much credit you get for it or not. I don't know what people say, but like my perception is that it's not talked about enough. What are some of your philosophies about marketing? And obviously you can weave the technological advancements into it, but like, what are some of your core philosophical, go-tos as it relates to marketing?
Yeah. So I work hard to be a good marketer, and I do pride myself in that. First of all, masterminding and learning from other people has been why, if I am considered a good marketer or a great marketer, it's because I'm really curious about best practices. I'm very humble that I don't really care where the best ideas come from. Test everything, and let the results speak for themselves. And so I've always, just when you spend a lifetime being humble and testing and learning from people, you get pretty good at it. So that's a foundation that I think on that premise alone, anybody can become a great marketer. And then I love being the guide. I
What's
love the
a
book.
what's like what's like a duration of time to test for? Like, do you have a formula
I
for
mean,
that?
it depends on. I mean, if you're doing, Bill Hellstad can comment on what that is when it comes to Facebook ads. But nowadays with digital media, it's not a lot. You can really figure things out with $20 and random testing on two different headlines. And back in the day, when you and I were doing direct mail and voice marketing first came out, I think a statistically valid test was 100,000 direct marketing pieces.
Yeah.
It was like a fortune. It'd take a month and it would be tens of thousands of dollars to have a statistically valid test. So the world's come a long way from that. But I think for me, being the guide, I remember when I read Donald Miller's book Story Brand for the first time, I was just like, I've interviewed Donald Miller, and as a marketer, I think when you can step back and say, your customer is the hero, and you're the guide, and you really try to create headlines and content around not what you like or what you want, but around the avatar of your consumer, whoever you're trying to sell to. Between testing and that philosophy of be the guide, don't try to be the hero. Those two things will get you pretty far. Those are definitely the North Star for me.
What's the difference between the guide and the hero for those that don't know the format?
Well, since we got a lot of mortgage professionals and a lot of real estate professionals, when you brag on social media about how many loans you closed and how you're number one and I'm this and I'm that, that's not the guide. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's like, look at me,
Mm-hmm. The
I'm a
ego.
badass.
The ego.
And being the guide is when you make someone else the hero. You shine a light on other people. You tell their stories, and you make them heroes. You tell a story about a family who was scared of homeownership, who rates had gone up, and they decided to go on hold. But then you showed them the numbers, and then they made this decision, and then they blank blank blank. The customer is the hero. It's what I do at Mortgage Coach. You don't see me creating a lot of videos, just me telling you about what you should do and how you should think, and principles from Dave Savage. You see me interviewing super successful people and making them the hero. Like that. That's my model. That's how I operate. That's how I create content. That's how I built Mortgage Coaches, by making other people the hero. And that's my story.
It's I appreciate your share so much, man, because like it's just refreshing, and it's also such the sweet truth. I mean, like even especially as a leader with your teams, it's like that's where leadership fails a lot of the time, is when you have a team that's working really hard and you're just taking on all of the adulation and not passing it down, and that's a part of a reverse marketing equation to your team as a leader when you're not doing that. So like, be thinking about it, those that are listening, from both perspectives. And certainly and what role in that formula as a guide, okay, does content play in your mind? Like,
well, before I answer that question, I want to throw one more dynamic around this, because I think it's so important. And I can't. Oh, it was Jay Kroll. I don't know if you got the opportunity to become friends with Jay Kroll, or him. He's just an epic loan officer in the Seattle market. $300+ million producer, just an incredible human being. And I spoke at a sales rally recently, and he shared this story. And I want to find these stats, but it was some article he read in, I don't know where, but it was about D1 coaches, and someone did this study, and took all the speeches that they had and the things that they would say, whether it was from an article, and the coaches that said we and us the most, compared to the coaches that said me and I
mm-hmm.
the most, it was like the we and us coaches, like were legends. The winning record versus the coaches that said I and me the most. And I can't remember the whole stats, but it was pretty remarkable. And I think like as leaders, we need to be careful. It's not like I and me, it's us and we. And so I just throw that out to the whole mortgage and real estate industry. As you lead a team, authorship is an ownership, and the more that your team authored the strategy, authored the mission, we have a mission. We believe that's just another form of being the guide, and it's not only sales and marketing, but it's leadership to drive a mission and build a company. So I just wanted to make sure we kind of hit it both sides.
Yeah,
marketing
thank you.
Externally and building culture internally. Anyways, what was your question?
Well, as I know that from even what you described about all the interviews that you've done, that a part of being the guide is to also be a content creator or at least a distributor of content. But what kind of content do you think is most effective? And I'm almost wanting to speak slightly more broadly based than just the mortgage industry. We obviously want to touch on that, but even if somebody's listening that's not in the mortgage industry, like that it would apply to them. I mean, I even found this with my restaurant, right? I can kind of loop back into that as a tie down to a totally different industry. But what do you think is the right kind of content that needs to be put out right now? And how frequently do you need to be in front of people to be relevant? And what's the quality versus quantity ratio? Like, are you just pumping out content and it's maybe not A+, or are you better off, putting out a little less and having it be top quality and unique? Just that realm. Talk to us about that.
Well, I'm figuring it out.
Good.
So don't want to come across, but I'll just tell you my framework. And I've had this framework for quite some time, and it works for me. So, most of the content I create, I have a 3-step process of think, feel, do. What do I want people to think? What do I want people to feel? And what do I want people to do? And so I don't necessarily do that before every interview I have, because it's become so part of, like, I'm always think, feel, do, and so that is a framework as I enter a conversation with someone, depending on just how, like, I don't have scripted questions. I've actually told most people, like, because I interview people, will you please give me the questions in advance? And usually I just say no, like, that's not the style of conversation. I want to have a dialogue. Like, here's a topic, here's a headline, I'm for sure going to ask you, and I give them 1 or 2 questions, but I just drive a think, feel, do. And then the other strategy I have with Mortgage Coach and the kind of content I am creating is story strategy. I always like, hey, what's the story and what's the strategy? And I just feel like, that's what life is all about. It's about creating stories, telling stories, connecting with stories. And then when it comes to business, it is executing strategies like sell or buy down, cost of waiting, rent versus own. So those are the frameworks of the type of content that I create and I focus on. The other thing that I put a lot of focus on, I had a very brief exchange with Larry King, I don't know, a few years before he passed. And I, always considered him, if not the greatest interviewer of all time, one of the greatest interviewers of all time. And we both spoke at an event, and I watched him. And then afterwards, because I was a speaker, I kind of had like VIP access, and I got to go backstage and, have 2 minutes with him. And I asked him, Larry, what's the best question? What's your all-time best question? And by the way, he's super funny. He had a really witty sense of humor. He told incredible stories.
He's a big Dodger fan too.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, huge Dodger fan. I would see him at the games all the time.
Yeah. Anyways, he just said, I don't know if he said son, but it was just like son. The question after the question is always the best question. And I was just like, do. Yeah. So I just tried to, always keep that in my pocket. Like, no matter what questions I want to ask, it's the question after the question. Mm-hmm. It's always the best question. And I did not come up with that myself.
Yeah. I've heard that quote before, and it is the well, it speaks to the importance of presence. It speaks to the importance of connection between the two people talking, and because you can't, if you're so attached to a script and an agenda in a conversation with somebody, then you're never going to allow the organic unfoldment of what really wants to happen. And so it's not curious, it's constricted, right? I mean, because you're confined to that script. So that, I think, and that's the magic. I mean, that's why I love, we both love a lot of the same podcasts. I mean, that's what I love about Joe.
I mean, we do. We've been sharing movie recommendations, book recommendations.
Yeah.
I think we text podcasts to watch,
We got our little Josh Metal, Dave Savage, Tim Braheem text thread where we're always sharing podcasts with each other. It's
have you started doing the pushing the sled yet? Did you?
Not yet. I was in Europe when that text went off.
Did you listen to that podcast?
I listened to the podcast of probably the first 2/3 of it, and then I looked the guy up on Instagram, and then I got your son's sled and then all those things, but I haven't gone out to actually get one yet. But I love listening to podcasts and learning about new stuff, man. It's always great, but that always comes from there being like just this organic conversation. Curiosity. So the one thing I wrote down when you were talking there is, for everybody, this is just my opinion, I think you'll probably agree, is that the other reason why it's really good to not be scripted, and I want to speak more like pragmatically now to like a lone originator or a person in sales that's trying to create content, right? Like valuable content. I happen to think John Downs is doing some great work, by the way, right now. Like I think John is creating some.
Today. I interviewed him today.
Johnny's
YouTube channel.
I'm proud of Johnny right now. He's really doing some great work, dude. Yeah.
Wait, time out. Like, I got off that conversation and I was like, if there was a poster child of, the loan officer of the future, he's a data-driven mortgage advisor, powered by humility and curiosity. Like John Downs would be a candidate for that. Like he's just doing it right all the way around.
I like his content. I don't think he thought a lot of people were looking at it, but we had a Zoom call about a week ago that he was on with like 30 of us, and I called him out, and he was
he one of your students? Are you coaching him?
Yeah. Well, right now he's not in our master's program, but he's coming back in very soon. He's taken some time off, but yeah, he's been with us for several years now, maybe 5 years. He's in group 6.
He's using Boomerang. He's using Mortgage Coach exactly the way they're supposed to be used. He's doing all the right things.
But the point I want to circle back to just real quick is that like it's so important. It doesn't matter if you're creating content on a reel or if you're doing a podcast interview like we're talking about, or if you're on stage and you're speaking in front of an audience of 1,000 people. The most important thing than the words that you say or any of that is, does the audience, whoever's looking at, can they connect with you? Like, do they lower their guard for you? Is that trust evoked? And that comes from sincerity, authenticity, where you're speaking from. You don't always have to be the slickest person. There's a really cool thing that we do. So Hillestad was our guest speaker at our master's retreat in DC about 5 years ago now. And we created, Scott Bertone and I created a video lab, 2 different tripods, 2 different, cameras, and it was to try to help people start to get in the groove of creating content to put on Facebook, right? So we had like Ryan Grant and Brent Hicks and a lot of very well scripted people that are naturally very gifted as orators. And then we had a couple of people that were just flat rookies. And like Dave Cook had never done a video before, and he was super nervous. And I was coaching him, and when the first take was done, he was like, "Oh man, I need to do that." And I'm like, "No way, dude." I'm like, "That was fucking magic. We are going with that." That night, everybody posted, and he crushed everybody else in terms of likes and comments. It wasn't even close. And he was the least articulate, but he was the most real. And he was super humble. Not that the others weren't. He was just really humble. You felt his nervousness. And we show it. We show this sequence every year in Costa Rica at our signature program retreat. We show 5 in a row. One of them's Ryan, one of them's Brent. everybody resoundingly votes for Dave Cook's video every time. And the reason I want to share this is because they hear your strategy, and I just wanted to insert within that really brilliant layout of the process that you go through, and you don't have to be perfect. In fact, it can actually work against you if you are. You need to be real, and you need to be sincere, and you need to have the right intention, which then will evoke the right energy of like, I really want to help you. Like, you got to really feel that shit. And then your video will be great and people will like you. And we go all the way back to the lone officer with the most friends wins with that one. You know, you got to have people like you. You have to have a likability factor in your marketing.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's what this shit's about, right? The fist?
No, my clap came from
your clap is your likability factor, man. You're like known
no,
for
but
it.
I didn't do it for anybody other than myself. It was always it was born out of early in my 20s. I went to a Tony Robbins event,
Okay,
and walked on fire, and you get a power move, and like my power move was always a clap, and it triggered me like, let's go, game time, and now when I and doing video and interviews, it's especially when I first started out, it was like an emotional trigger, and so I really did it for me, and then it became a thing, and I actually had people like, you really should stop doing that, like it's gotten old, and people from my wife to I think Renee Rodriguez for a period of time tried to get me to stop doing it. And then, you get to a point where you're like, dude, it works. It fires me up. And now it's kind of like, even if I don't want to do it, it's hard for me not, when I'm on camera and it's going to be recorded and it's game time, let's go.
mm-hmm.
So it's for me, but
I love that. I love the fact that you didn't let Renee talk you out of it, because I know you guys are buddies, and I know that you respect his teaching abilities in the space of communication. And I love the fact that you're doing it for you. That's really cool. I'm so glad I asked you about that, because I mean, I actually didn't ask you about it. I kind of made fun of you for a second, but then you told us the story, and I'm glad you did, because that's super cool. Like it's like your centering thought, right? Like it brings you into the, like, okay, boom, right here, right now, execute. You love interviewing people, don't you?
Oh yeah, no, I don't remember when it was, but I used to pretty much time block 2 hours a day to consume content, to be smarter, and
Wow.
being ADD, it was, partially just curious and hungry for knowledge, and then partially, keeping my mind busy and feeling proud of myself. But a number of years ago, when I really went from just doing one interview a week, and that's what I had allocated for a long time, was, hey, I'm going to do the best sales meeting every Tuesday at 9:00. It's a business strategy. But then when I started doing it more, it was like, okay, I'm only going to consume 1 hour a day, and I'm going to create 1 hour a day. And that create became part of how I consume. Like, so while I'm creating content that serves a business mission that I'm on, I'm also learning. I'm closer to the street than any other SaaS executive in the business. I know what the user wants more than anyone else. I know what's happening in the mortgage industry. I know what the trends are. I also get a lot of personal development ideas from the conversation. So it's become a business strategy to achieve our mission. It's also become a personal development time that I love. And it's something that when I am getting interviewed or I am interviewing, my ADD is at rest. Like I'm not, like picking up my phone and jonesing out. I'm truly present.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least for the most part. I mean, sometimes I get off track, but Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's just I'm learning so much about you, and the words of curiosity and creativity keep coming up, and then the word growth. Like I'm like all the stuff that I keep hearing you say is you're just always learning and growing because you're always curious. You're just taking in new stuff, and I so can resonate with you about how when you're creating this content by interviewing people, as long as you remain curious, you're growing as a human being too. So it almost sometimes feels like, I mean, I'll be coaching clients sometimes, and I'll start to think, man, I probably should be paying them for this session, man, because I'm learning a lot of shit right now that I need to hear.
Or you're getting reminded on shit but you needed that reminder.
Yes, totally. It's a gift. It's a gift. But maybe that's actually a really interesting thing to like explore too. Like what if everybody had that mindset, and no matter what vocation they were in, whether they're trying to monetize or not, but they're always just giving and curious and asking questions and taking interest. And so it's like this, like, it feels good when somebody's asking you questions about them. It helps them be able to like talk things out.
Totally.
Like if everybody did that with each other more, we'd be a lot wiser society.
Oh, bro. I mean, if everybody was just 10% nicer, we would be a much better society. If everybody, invested in a little more learning, and everybody just be 10% nicer, and good things will happen.
Good red wine makes you 10% nicer. I think everybody just needs to make sure that they're well, I don't want to force anybody into drinking, but Dave and I love our red wine.
Yeah. And by the way, guys, I'm going to be interviewing Tim sometime, and hopefully before the end of the year, and we will have wine in our hands. And
oh yeah.
We will be in the physical world together. I'm trying to get Tim to come down and let me cook for him, and we'll do our version of this for the mortgage coach community.
Sold, man. I'll bring. I was just with my wife in Europe on our honeymoon, and
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's definitely a blessing for sure. We're in France, and it was like my first time in France in almost forever. I mean, I was there like 22 years ago for 2 days, and I've been wanting to drink. I'm wanting to learn about French wine a lot. And I got there. I did a lot of testing for sure. I was there 11 days, bottle in the afternoon, bottle in the evening that we would split. So probably had 20 different bottles of wine. Had some really good rosés in the south of France like that a lot. But man, as soon as I got to Italy, I just realized I just like the Sangiovese grape, man. That's just my grape. I mean,
I'm Italian too. I mean, I do. There are a lot of French wines that I love, but I just, resonate towards Italian wines. You and I both have it in common, and we're actually going to be doing another Italy trip together as a family. We're in the planning process, and my wife said, "Hey, make sure we reach out to Tim." And
for sure, dude.
Run our agenda by him.
Oh, well, first of all, I'm doing a couples retreat in Italy next summer. The medals will be there.
Where's it going to be? Where's it going to be?
The first 6 nights are at Casale di Bibbiano. Okay. Then, and we're going to the Palio. And I don't want to say this because they're going to watch it, but the seats are not bad. Let's put it that way. They're really fucking good.
Well, did they be the last time we went to the Palio together?
Yes, better.
Well, they were pretty compact.
They were good. They were good when we were there for sure. But these are better. And a whole bunch of other cool stuff. And then 2 nights in Florence and 4 nights in Rome. So 10 couples. It's going to be wonderful.
Well, make sure you make me aware of that. Like, let's have you sold it out?
I actually have room for one more couple. Am I going to get a Dave Savage commitment on video here? Is that what's going to happen? We'll talk offline, but I do have room for one more couple.
Okay.
So I can fill you in. It's going to be amazing, man. It's going to be really amazing. July or late June through early July. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So back to wine. Like you also got me turned on to Amarone. And I have you to thank for that, because I wasn't an Amarone drinker for a long time, and then started drinking it maybe about 6-7 years ago because I always remembered how much you love it. That's a good wine.
Oh, it is like if there was only one wine, like, okay, you can only have one wine for the rest of your life. I don't know if I would want to have one wine for the rest of my life, but
No,
Amarone,
that'd be tragic.
That would, I probably wouldn't it wouldn't be my favorite wine after a month, but it is my favorite wine. It's
Yeah.
very special, and the way they make it, and just how difficult it is, how much love there is. It's pretty special.
Yeah. The other thing too, the food. My God, man, it's like it just always crushes. Like we were in France for all that time. As soon as we got to Italy, like the level of the meals just went 2 notches up. Just
Really, Italy
crushed it. It wasn't even close, man.
Yeah.
We had a couple of really good meals in France, but as an overall body of work, it wasn't even close.
Not comparable.
No, 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 no. No. I mean, well, we could go on forever about Italy, that's for sure.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, we could.
So your boy Jack, how old is he now? 21?
20.
20.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, if you could go back to when you were his age, can you envision that? Like what you were doing? What were you doing back then? Like, were you playing football or something, or?
Yeah, I was not doing well in school. Gets great grades. Does all the right things. And you remember, I was ADD and dyslexic, and he is neither. He did not get those gifts from me, but he's got different gifts, and he's doing really well. I mean, he's loves fitness. He's working out. He bought a duplex this summer, so he's got an owner-occupied duplex, which what a great way to start off in life, and everything. So I'm really pumped. I don't know if you knew, but he transferred from Syracuse to Chapman.
Yeah, you told me that.
Yeah. So no, he's doing great. But I was just out of control, but having fun,
So Dave Savage, current year, right, gets to talk for 5 minutes to Dave Savage, 20 years old. What's the advice?
I was having fun and playing loose. I mean, I was like,
but what would you say? What would you say to him? Like, what advice do you have for him?
It's all going to be good, like it's going to be good. But I wasn't stressed out at that time. Like I wasn't worried about it. I was just looking for good times, good laughs, good funs, good concerts, chasing girls. Like I can't even say I wish I would have got serious sooner. Maybe I would have told him, don't worry about school. But that I would have had to know, like, at that time, my grandfather got his MBA, my dad got his MBA, like being a professional, being successful required college and an MBA. So maybe I would have told him, like, don't worry about that. That's not your story. And go be an entrepreneur, go be creative, become an inventor of something. So maybe, but again, I like the way it turned out, and no regrets. But I was not feeling like I was going to be a success professionally, and maybe that fueled even more fun. But no regrets.
I love that. Man, is there a more rigged system in our system than the educational system at the higher levels? Holy shit. I mean, in my opinion is that there's plenty of reasons to go get a great college education. I'm not saying that.
It's a good use of time. Like if you're,
but it's not a prerequisite to being happy and being successful. There are different paths,
or both or either.
And that system is like, I mean, bro, like when you look at the cost of going to college when you and I were college age, and what it is now, it's crazy. Like it's gone absolutely berserk, and just because, and add to that like a bachelor's degree now doesn't mean anywhere near as much as it did back when you and I were going to school. You got to go get like a master's practically to be the equivalent of what a bachelor's meant back then. So it's always a tricky thing because as a parent, you want your kids to be safe. So the safe play is make sure they get a college education.
There's good skills that are developed. I'm not going to mention it all, but it's not everything, and it is out of control expensive. It has to have a reset, and they haven't. The real world is now physical and digital, and these big college campuses have built these large physical infrastructures that I don't know. It's going to be interesting what what higher education looks like a decade from now. It's going to be
Correct.
very interesting.
Well, it's like you were saying, what Zuckerberg said, at the beginning of this conversation about like there's the world that existed pre-COVID, and then there's the world that exists now. And, there was a world that exists then, the world that exists now. And, some of that means that, look, let's not forget that when you and I were college age, the only real access to information on a substantial degree of accuracy, we would hope, would be through an educational system, a formal educational system. But you can get access to a lot of that information now in various ways. So if you were I want to wind this down by asking some questions that we can have the listener really take home and anchor to. So, regardless of what business you're in, realtor or loan originator, what are a couple of very important mantras or philosophies that you have about business and how to be successful in business that you could share?
Yeah, well, I think it's all about leadership, and it's all about integrity, and it's all about value. I mean, those are the three anchors that I've tried to build my career as a business person on. And now when people say integrity, I think most people think of that as honesty or doing the right thing. And I do think that is a pillar of integrity. But I think an equally important pillar of integrity is doing what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
So there's, integrity is more than that. And if there was one single thing that I think will help you as a business person, is to be a person of integrity, do the right thing, and do what you say you're going to do. And that single thing, I think, will lead to greatness in your life. When it comes to being a person of value, that's what I built my career on. In 1992, when I came up with the value prop that my advice makes a difference, and that was, what I built my mortgage career on. First of all, to become that person whose advice makes a difference. Like, you sit down and talk to me, I will ask some questions, I will create value, I will become a person whose advice makes a difference. Like, you just can't go wrong with that in any business there is. If you just spend your life, becoming a person whose advice makes a difference. And that was my value prop as a loan officer. That was what I founded Mortgage Coach. I wouldn't even have invented Mortgage Coach if I hadn't had that value prop. And then I do think leadership, so again, those two things, and then leadership. I think when I can't remember if it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, on stage at the Monitor, or the Digital Mortgage Conference, I said the quote that technology will not disrupt loan officers, but loan officers that use technology will disrupt loan officers who don't. Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of years later, I realized, what? It's not just technology; it's technology and leadership. And I do think that is the era that we are in. Is that in any business that you're in, if you're a great leader, and don't, when I say leader, don't just think of your team, like leading your team. You got to lead the customer. You got to lead your partner, and you develop your leadership skills to lead a team and build a culture, and you develop your leadership skills to lead a client and lead your referral sources. You can't go wrong. So those are the three things that just go through my head all the time. I evolve, and I think regardless of what business anyone is in, if you think about those things, you get great at those things, you will be in the top 10%. If you work hard enough, you'll be in the top 1%. And if you work hard enough, get good enough and get a little lucky, you can be in that little fraction of 1%. It does take a combination of luck, skill, and hard work to get into that little needle. Those are my thoughts.
Love that, bro. It was interesting as I was listening to you describe all those things. I was like, wow, he's just, every one of these answers is building trust. It goes back to that thing that you just discussed earlier. And Especially the doing what you say you're going to do, the integrity part. And I love how you teased apart the fact that it's not just being honest, it's doing what you say you're going to do. Because that's what really ultimately builds more trust than anything. Because people then can start to feel like they can let their guard down because they know they can count on you and they don't have to be worried about whether or not they're going to get duped by you or something like that, or you're going to let them down.
Hey, real quick before we run by that, and that was why when I first started using technology, uh, remember I was ADD, I had the spelling skills of a third grader, I was in my 20s, and I started using a CRM back when it was DOS, and I did it for two reasons. One was spell check. It's like, oh my God, you know, like I intuitively knew that if I could like talk to someone and send them a letter and not have spelling errors, that would be an advantage. And oh, I can schedule a call and actually do what I say I'm going to do. Like I started using a CRM because it powered integrity. It was the power that, and again, I'm dyslexic, I'm ADD, like those are not gifts. Like if I did not have technology, I would not be a person of integrity. Not because I'm a bad person. It's just like I forget.
Yeah.
I got things going on. And I used technology in my early days to just power those things.
Do you need more referral partners right now? When I was a $230 million producer, I executed on specific strategies that helped me develop relationships with realtors, accountants, financial planners, and life insurance agents. And I've now put it into a product called the Complete Referral Partner Success System. Gang, these are strategies that my clients are using successfully right now, real time, to give them a competitive edge. And for podcast listeners only, we're knocking $400 off the price. Normally it's $899. For podcast listeners, it's only $499. Use the link in the podcast show notes below or go to www.performance-experts.com to find out more. Once again, www.performance-experts.com. And we hope that you are enjoying this episode of the 360 Experience. Great share, man. Thank you. That's such a good way to cement in the teachings that you just provided. The other thing that came forward for me, I was like, when I think of Dave Savage, I think of him as a marketer. I also think of him, and I feel like what I'm about to say is absolutely a part of marketing. It's just a different genre. Is that I think of you as a master networker. Like I think that you've done a very effective job over the course of your career, sidestepping some delicate political relationships. Okay, and keeping yourself in a good connection with a lot of people, and networking, I think, is a underutilized and undertaught topic. Like you got a guy like, so John Downs' partner, Greg Kingsbury, is a good example. So Kingsbury, who's one of my favorite guys, he does, I don't know, 50, 60 loans a month in a normalized market, 40 maybe, but all purchase in that realm. He's got like 17, 18 good realtors, but he is just a good networker. He's a good relationship developer. Any tips that you have as it relates to that? Because I consider you to be outstanding in that area.
I have very clear steps in a path for that. And some of them became very natural to me that I don't know if I got lucky, but anyone that gets into sales, I have a very first book that I refer, because I get a lot of people, hey, my kid's getting in sales, what book should they read? And, oh, my kid's getting into business. And, to me, the number one book I give is the Four Agreements. And,
oh, wow.
It's also what I would say when it comes to being a great networker and building lifelong relationships with people. I mean, I give a lot of the credit that I have, as you put, navigating, business, to not taking things personally. Like, guys, that's one of the Four Agreements. And, when someone doesn't return your phone call, you could take it personally or not. When someone kind of screws you, which people will do, don't take it personally. Like they didn't necessarily do it just to hurt you. They did it for them. So the Four Agreements, don't make any assumptions. It's another one of the Four Agreements. And if you you live a life of not taking things personally, of not making assumptions. Those are two. By the way, you could just do those two things and be a pretty goddamn good networker, and not blow up relationships because you took things personally and you made assumptions. And then, what's number 3 of 4 agreements? It's be impeccable with your word. And this is the thing about, like, that's what they say in the book. I always say, it's like, don't use your words against yourself. Like, people will make assumptions, they'll take it personally, then they'll talk about it, and then they'll tell the story to themselves 10 times. And before you know it, they're not showing up for a relationship in a way that is positive for them or the person. And then, number 4 is do your best and realize that your best is different from day to day. And something I always get from you in this next stage of life, because I've known you for a long time, is don't be so hard on yourself, or, like, you're really good, like, you're good enough, Dave. You've given me some therapy on that. So if you can read that book, if you can become one with that, you'll do pretty good with networking. You'll do pretty good with lifelong relationships.
I didn't expect that as your answer, and it was great to hear your interpretation of Don Miguel Ruiz's book. We pass that out to our clients in the signature program of L360 in the first year, and then we do a lot of teaching around those 4 agreements because they're so incredibly important. And that last one is always do your best. Like, that's the most important one, I think, because without, like, it's really important to ask yourself the question, did I do my best? But to not confuse that with, was I perfect? Because they're very different. Because you can truly not have the intention of harming somebody and do something that you look back and you go, wow, I was like really in a hurry there, and I didn't really think about somebody else as an example and how it might make them feel. And then you could sit there in self-judgment, criticize the crap out of yourself, and it's not going to really get you very far. It's actually going to set you back versus getting curious. Okay, here we go, and going, why did I do that? Like, what happened there? Oh, wow, that was me moving too fast again. Shit, that actually doesn't work really well for me, and I really want to, set some goals to slow down. But so it's like a process that I developed a long time ago. So I call it the loop. So what happens is that when you have that self-judgment and then you criticize yourself, okay, then you feel shitty and you beat yourself up internally. And then you have to do the things that you know to do strategically to make yourself not feel shitty, which is generally the things that caused you to be in this loop in the first place. It puts you right back onto the same treadmill or, hamster in a wheel. And so you'll go out like as an example, if the decision that I made that I'm looking at going, why did I do that? And I'm beating myself up was rooted in me being liked or being perfect or being viewed a certain way. After you've beaten the crap out of yourself and you feel really bad, what are you going to do to go out and be liked and make yourself feel better? You're going to go out and you're going to overcommit to more shit and then not be impeccable with your word and not follow through, right? Like, so it's like getting off that flywheel and going, okay, wait, let me just get curious, because curiosity is the exit from the flywheel, and learn. What am I here to learn right now? That's one of the things I've been telling a lot of my clients too, Dave, lately is, and I've been practicing it myself in the mornings in my morning routine, is asking myself the question, what did yesterday teach me? What did I learn about myself yesterday? And just journaling on that for a few minutes, because there's always shit to learn if we're curious.
Yeah, no, I love that. And then, the other thing, that when you're tough on yourself, it always manifests into being a complainer and being too tough on other people. And then you're not an attractive leader. You're not an attractive person to be around. And, people want to be around people that are the lighthouse. And I think that's also a good segue to the whole mindset. And by the way, it's probably, if not one of the best mindset books, because if you can practice the 4 agreements, how could you be anything but in a good mindset if you just could practice such things? So anyways, I love that. I didn't know that you were a big 4 agreements guy. This is the first time you and I have ever talked about the 4 agreements, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we actually assigned.
It doesn't surprise me that you are, though. I mean, that makes total sense.
I read in school, I read, what, 2 or 3 of Don Miguel Ruiz's books. Have you read The Mastery of Love?
I have not read it, but I have it.
That's good.
And
And then
the 5 agreements, you know.
and The Voice of Knowledge. Voice of Knowledge is a really good book. It's kind of a sarcastic title, and the thing is it's about the stories that you're telling yourself that we think are true, and how that's driving our behaviors, and how to really identify them, and written in a Don Miguel Ruiz style, which is very easy to read and digestible, which I like a lot about his books.
Well, they're like therapy. I listen to the 4 agreements almost the audiobook, and it's almost like therapy. Well, no, it's not almost. It is. Like anytime just the way it's read, the music, the vibe is very therapeutic. So,
does it have like some Toltec music behind it? Like,
of course.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
I remember the first time though. I don't know how many people had to tell me to read it before I finally did it, because people would tell me, and then I would like, it's a little woo-woo, like.
Yeah, totally.
I put it down probably 5 times, and then someone told my wife to read it. My wife read it, and she's like, "This is really good." And then I'm like, "Oh, well, if Kelly read it, like I got to just get through it." And then next thing you know, this is like my all-time favorite book, and I've become an evangelist. But I already did the not taking things personally, and I didn't have the framework around it that I did, but it's always just been kind of a natural, those 4 agreements have naturally come into my mind most of my life.
Here's another gem of a book, almost exactly the same size, that I just got done reading for the 4th time, that I love so much. Have you ever read Tuesdays with Morrie?
I have not, but I've heard of it.
Gosh, it's so good, bro. Yeah, so
I got to add it to the list.
It's a keeper. It's small, like the 4 agreements. You'll read it in like an airplane flight, and
yeah.
You'll probably cry at the end. Just a little heads up, because it's such a beautiful and touching book. You know the story behind it?
I don't. I've heard of the book multiple times. I just don't have it and haven't read it or listened to it.
Great, quick story. So Morrie Schwartz was a Jewish professor in upstate New York, as I recall, and Mitch Albom, who was a very famous sports writer for the Detroit Free Press. He's on ESPN and a bunch of shows like that. And in the mid 80s, I believe it was, he comes home after a long day of work. He's stressed out, comes home from the stadium. He turns on Nightline with Ted Koppel, and he sees his professor from college dying of Lou Gehrig's disease. And he's being interviewed by Ted Koppel. And Ted Koppel does a series of interviews with Morrie Schwartz as his disease is progressing and as he's dying over the course of like the next 6 months on Nightline, on ABC at night. And Mitch Albom decides to go visit his old professor. And the book is of like the 13 consecutive Tuesdays he spent with him while he was dying, and what his teacher had to teach him about what life is about. And it's very sweet and simple and very easy read. And it's just like the sweet truth, like that's kind of where I would equate it a bit to the 4 agreements, in the sense it's like irrefutable, like this, of course. Like, I need to really be thinking about this shit. It's important, So yeah, you'll enjoy that book. You'll enjoy it for sure.
Well, I will have read it or listened to it by the time we talk next.
Right on, brother. Hey, it was really great to spend a couple of hours with you. I feel like I got to know you so much more, and that's my takeaway from this that I feel most grateful about. I was like, man, I learned so much about Dave today, and thank you. Thanks for sharing yourself so openly, and I know that everybody's going to get a lot of value from this.
No, I'm grateful for you, Tim. You've been a super important leader in my life, a mentor in my life, a friend in my life, and love how you're doing this next chapter and all the value you're bringing to some really great leaders in the mortgage business. So keep it up, brother.
Thank you, bro. It's been super fun to be with you, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon, man.
All right. Take care, man.